is that? Everything has been installed. Yes. Okay. I will be fine, Dad.
Yeah, for this debate tonight.
You gotta keep long, go do the far job.
Charlie, high tech.
She the lie bad go happen tonight. This are no fence.
They couldn't get in this time.
How come?
Security warehouse.
Smart choice. I guess you have some footage for me there. Crystal clear picture. Pause. I think I know this man. He has a long history with robbery and rape. You are fortunate to have equipped your house with gadgets from security warehouse. Call it in. We'll begin the investigation from here.
Control, come over.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for staying with Pan-African TV. This is The Couch. My name is Amma Pratt. Now, you know that today is a Thursday, and on Thursdays we have a hard talk edition of the show. Now, today we are looking at world politics, global politics. We are going to look at all the recent happenings, around the globe, around the world, and its consequences and perhaps its effects on you and I. And so today we are going to sort of present to you a potpourri of issues. We'll look at strikes in the UK, that's Glasgow specifically. We would also look at strikes in Palestine. We would come back, onto the continent, look at the Commonwealth, and perhaps look at this, I think it's the 13th Edinburgh Education Awards that's ongoing, this very topical issue that's ongoing. We'll look at that. And we'll also look at the murder of the international journalist, that's Mr. Jamal Kharshoggi. So these are some of the issues we want to look at today. We want to talk about the consequences, for the masses, for you and I, like I said before, and perhaps also look at the consequences for the continent, Africa. I can't proceed without saying thank you immediately to People's Dispatch all the way in India, for some of the footages that we will be showing for this evening's discussion. Now, you want to join us via phone, through text and WhatsApp to the number that's scrolling in front of the screen. You also want to join us on our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our Twitter page. It's all at Pan-African TV. I will take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I introduce my guest. Stay with us.
Ben, Cedria, Yatra, Mr. Kim. Strong showing every year.
Oh, Kusia, a member draw, Gaza limited for Akofaba, the Piasso Bomitisu, and he said, because so much Madame for Adolf. And what Shem said, a draw a Mr. Kill, Nico on her, and he said, no, it's since time I have 1 million, and running down and put the service of your back. Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill. Coming. Yeah. I don't have say that here. Mr. Kill. But you should back up. And not the crowd. You know, baby, the way come out. Mr. Kill. Oh, yeah, Kill back up.
I give you all a boy could give you.
la la! As part of our 2 years anniversary celebration, Pan African TV is offering discounted advertisement from now till December. You can call 02743 09099 02743 09099 for all bookings and enquiries. Pan African TV, truly African.
Hello, good morning, madam. I just parked my car and I think they stole it.
Oh, really? Then please hold on. Let me check the location for you. I'll get back to you since it.
Thank you, Global Trackers. With Global Trackers, all your assets are safe. Call them now on 0246 320 860. 0246 320 860.
Hello, welcome back. You are still watching The Couch with me, Amma Pratt. Now, let me quickly introduce my guest, my very special guest for this evening. I have in the studio with me Mr. Justice Ekufu Heneku, who is no stranger to Pan African TV, to the sets, and hopefully to all you viewers. He happens to be a social scientist, right? Let's keep it simple this evening. So just social scientist. Thank you so much, Mr. Heneku, for making time. Thank you. Always a pleasure having you here. Okay, seated right next to Mr. Heneku is my Busiapin. His name is Mr. KOFI KAKRABA PRATT. He happens to be an immigration law advisor and a forensic psychologist in the UK. Mr. Pratt, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure to be in the same room with you. Welcome. Welcome. Okay, so let's talk immediately about our first issue. I want us to talk about the Commonwealth. Just the Commonwealth first, and then perhaps we can come and talk about this very interesting educational award scheme that is very topical presently. I think this whole thing happened yesterday. So let's start with the Commonwealth. Let's look at perhaps what it is, what it is, and perhaps why it was set up. Mr. Pratt, you want to start for us?
Yes, I don't think the Commonwealth organization is any extraordinary organization. During the mid-50s, the colonialists realized that they were losing grip on the colonies that they occupy and control. They were losing the ability to control its resources and its direction. So they decided to set up some organization and put everybody together and find a way of using those organizations to still continue to dominate the colonies, control its resources, control the way we think, the way we do things. And so they set up this organization and put all of us in it as one family and gave us some kinds of rules that we have to follow. And also in doing that, they ensured that because we had different set of rules, different set of organizations, and different set of things that we had to agree to, it will impede the unity of Africa, because you realize that you have some African countries belonging to Commonwealth or the Francophonie or something, so you have different rules to follow. Now, what they did then was to offer some kind of trade arrangements, some cultural arrangements and so on, to still keep us tied to their apron strings. It was not something that offered help to us, because if you look at scholarships that
the Commonwealth provides, for instance, for people from the colonies. They give us a few scholarships every year. Where do they spend the money? They spend the money in their countries and in their universities. And what do? They give you the kind of training that does not make you an African. They give you the kind of training that makes you think like them, behave like them. And when you eventually come back into your society, you become an agent of the colonial authorities. We have people in the ministries, for instance, haven't had training from overseas and come back, are more interested in how to facilitate trade between Ghana and UK, for instance, or how to design Ghana to look like some suburbs of the UK or Canada or New Zealand, instead of thinking about how to make Ghana trade with, say, Nigeria, Togo, Burkina Faso. Would it not be easier to trade between African countries than to trade with UK, Canada, or the West? You know, so these are some of the things that were designed to keep us still tied to them. And I'll be talking about more of these things, especially as we go, especially about who heads the Commonwealth and things like that.
And because I know you are passionate about this topic, you've written, you know, perhaps extensively on it. I don't disagree with everything you write about, though, and we won't get there, right?
Yes, I agree that we have to disagree, otherwise the world will be a very dull place.
Mr. Heneku,
yes.
First of all, do you agree that this is why it was set up, or do you think there are some other reasons for which the Commonwealth, you know, was set up?
Well, Amma, good evening. Good evening to Mr. Pratt, and good evening to your viewers. Indeed, I do agree. The Commonwealth is just a hangover of the colonial past, the empire dreams of Britain, which it wants to continue. But then the Commonwealth started way before the 1950s. The Commonwealth started because the British overseas territories, which Britain settled, whether Canada, Australia, were still, you know, under British rule, at least under their monarchy, when they had their independence. When Canada became independent, or when Canada constitutionally had a prime minister, Australia had a prime minister, or New Zealand had a prime minister, they were still constitutionally tied to Great Britain because their head of state was the King of England or the Queen of England. So that is how their Commonwealth started. Of course, the content of the Commonwealth changed because from the 1948 or 49, when India became independent, India was not a white country. India was an Asian country. And India did not accept that the King of England then should be the King of India. I mean, they got complete independence. But Britain needed still to keep, like Mr. Pratt said, some of these colonies within its orbit. So it used culture, that's language, that the fact that they had created a common colonial service, civil service with its practices, etc., to keep it together within its, you know, economic orbit, because Britain itself was a poor country, and Britain industrialized and built itself as a result of the exploitation of its colonies. So it needed to do that. Again, there was competition from another English-speaking country, that's the United States of America. So by United States of America, although they were an English colony before they became independent, never joined the Commonwealth. So in order for Britain to keep its economic, you know, monopoly, if I may say so, it deepened this Commonwealth association with the new liberated African and Asian countries in order to maintain trade, encourage trade. Again, mind you, Britain became a member of the EU only in the 1970s.
Yes.
And before then, they had to make sure that they had a backyard, a monopoly within the world space, you know, in order to be able to trade. and use the funds it has stolen all during the colonial times to grant aid. So yes, the Commonwealth, apart from scholarships and other things, also was giving out loans. I mean, I must say that, for example, part of the loan which was used in building Akosombo Dam came from the Commonwealth. It was a loan, it was paid back, but it did come from them. So they use aid as a tool to maintain British hegemony way after the British Empire had gone down.
Is it relevant today? Do you find that this, can we call it a boys club sort of, this nice place to belong and associate and foster friendship, economic, because beyond the economy, I struggle to see its relevance even in culture, because it's so different from the French assimilation, isn't it? With the French assimilation, you could see the penetration of the culture and all of that, but with the British and the Commonwealth organization, it's not so obvious. Perhaps I'm blind, educate me. And so I fail to see anything else apart from the economic aspects of the whole arrangement. Is it relevant today?
Everything and every organization is relevant at every point in time. Okay. But who is it relevant to? Who benefits from that organization's existence? As far as I'm concerned, the Commonwealth as it stands now is not relevant to either the Ghanaian culture, the Ghanaian economy, the Ghanaian society, or anything to do with our economic emancipation, our economic development, and our social interactions with other African countries or other parts of the world. But it is very relevant to the United Kingdom, and you will realize that they are striving to do everything possible to keep the leadership of the Commonwealth by making the head of the Commonwealth a hereditary thing, which I disagree very much, and I think that that part needs to be reformed. But how is it relevant to Ghana today? Now, assuming that we get 100 scholarships in a year, the money that the scholarships provide will be spent in a British university, for instance. That money is not going to be spent in Legon or in Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology or Cape Coast University. So the money goes back to their economy. Now, whilst the person who had a scholarship is in the UK, they do all kinds of things to ensure that the person holds allegiance to the colonial state. Now, they've created this very interesting thing that once people go and study and come back, they are placed in very sensitive and very interesting parts in our economy, in the ministries and so on. So when there are discussions going on, you find these alumni of some university in the West wanting to promote things of the West, trade, you name it. So its relevance to Ghana is very minimal. I don't see it at all. We are helping them to create a chain of loyalists that they can control through this scholarship schemes of getting people to go there and study. If they want to spend the monies in Ghanaian universities, develop Ghanaian entrepreneurship, develop independent thinking, that will be fine. That would have been very relevant to us, but at the moment I don't see it.
As it stands now, you see it as an avenue of creating unofficial ambassadors.
Yeah, because if you look at it, how were the people who staged the coup of 1966 recruited? They went to Sandhurst, a military institution in the UK, and the CIA and the military intelligence in the UK managed to get to them very easily. They show them nice things. Look, you have people go to an international conference or an international event to sign a contract. They invite them there 5 days or so early before the signing event. They give them per diems and show them nice things. And on the day of the signing, the people are just interested in which part of the contract they should sign.
Where? Just show me where.
Just show me where, because they've been introduced to Harrods, they've been giving them per diem. This idea of per diem came from the colonial mentality. Listen, tell me who needs the per diem. If you are president of this country, for instance, and you are going for an international conference in London, your accommodation is paid for, your air ticket is covered. You have somebody take care of everything you need. Your transport, everything is taken care of. So why do you need a per diem? Tell me why you need a per diem. What is it that you need a per diem to do? These are some of the things that were created as part of the special links to ensure that we develop this kind of loyalty to them. So you think they've done you a favor, and then you go and do things that favors them as against the country. You return the favor.
To return the favor. Mr. Heneku, do you think it's relevant today? Do you think the Commonwealth organization is relevant today?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, and depends to whom it's relevant to.
Just
whether
like
it's
Mr.
relevant, yeah, just like Mr. Pratt said. But you were asking a question about the channels through which, for example, the British and others pass through to influence us culturally. For example, they have the British Council. You have USAID. USAID, British Council, Alliance Française, all are cultural arms of states which are part of their foreign policy instruments.
And I must say they are very effective.
Indeed. They create a band of loyal people who are loyal to the ideologies or loyal to the colonial past or to the country or to the language or something of that sort, who becomes lobbyists in whichever field of endeavor that they find themselves in that country. And invariably, they are used, like Mr. Pratt said, to further or advance the interests of these countries. The truth of the matter is that we live in a globalized world, and it's very important for every country and every citizen to be conscious and aware of their self-interest. So what is the self-interest of Ghana? So if Ghana is in the Commonwealth, what is in it for us? What do we give? Are we conscious of what we are giving out under the Commonwealth? And are we conscious of what we are getting out of it? If you just opposite that to your policy, then of course you can also use it as an instrument to benefit your people. Of course, you can send people out on scholarships and they will come and they will still be nationalistic. If you know exactly what you are doing, if you put in place the right policies in order to guide them. I mean, the Chinese sent a lot of people to the United States to go and learn about almost everything. The Japanese did so in order to go and develop their country. Why? Because they were conscious, they had a certain national consciousness.
You know what you are going there to take out of the place. You go in, take it, come back, and use it for your benefit.
Because even with this per diem, now you don't have to go there for you to get per diem. Now when they come and organize a conference here, they pay you per diem. All these NGOs, everything that we are doing now, they give money to be paid, so that if you don't get paid, you don't do it. Even for community service, things you're doing for yourself, for your community, you think some foreigner should come and organize it for you or pay you for it. So it's that mentality, that's mentality which is very, very critical.
Which is a problem. Mr. Heneku, I would let you speak to this issue of the Duke of Edinburgh International Awards, perhaps give us a little perspective. But before that, I want Mr. Pratt to talk to us about, this is an issue he himself raises in something that he writes. You speak about the right of residence as a thorny issue for you in this whole Commonwealth conversation. I want you to expand on that, if you may.
In the past, up to about 1983, if you're a Commonwealth citizen, you could travel to any other Commonwealth citizen and behave like any other Commonwealth citizen would behave. You had the same kind of rights of residence. Like if I went to UK in 1970, 1975, I'd be entitled to the same kind of treatment like anybody from Canada, Australia, New Zealand would be entitled to. These days, it's not like that. We have sort of created first-class Commonwealth citizens, second-class Commonwealth citizens, and third-class Commonwealth citizens. For instance, if I lived in the UK and I know that I want to marry again, no, but now
that's a juicy bit of
but if I lived in the UK and I wanted to marry, if I were a Canadian, it's so easy and very simple. There are not much restrictions and impediments put in your way as a Canadian citizen wanting to marry in the UK. But if you are from Ghana, from Nigeria, or from Cameroon, there's so many impediments, so many things that you have to show. You have to show that you earn a minimum of £18,500 a year, for instance. How do you prove to somebody that the person you are marrying is not intending on divorcing you in 2 years or in 3 years' time? Now, if that criteria is not applied to somebody coming from Australia or New Zealand, why should that be applied to somebody coming from Ghana or Nigeria? So we don't have the same kind of citizenship and residency rights as people from there. You know that if you are from Canada, you're a Commonwealth citizen, you want to go to the UK, you grab your passport and you get, all you need is money to buy your ticket. When you arrive in the UK, oh, hello, how are you? You're welcome. You can stay for up to a certain number of months, unless you want to stay beyond that, you know. But if you are from Ghana, you have to first go on the internet, apply for a visa, and if you want to work in the UK, you have to show that you can speak English language, even though English is used to teach you from kindergarten to university.
I personal experience, I have a degree in English.
Yes.
But for my second degree, when I was going to study in the UK, I had to conduct an interview to prove that I could speak English.
That you could speak
even
English.
with my English degree, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but somebody from Canada doesn't have to do that. From Australia doesn't have to do that. From New Zealand doesn't have to do that. You have to. And there's a long queue. Sometimes it takes about 3 months to even get a date to set that paper to prove that you can speak English or go for the interview. Now, the funny thing is that if a German doctor wants to work in the UK, he doesn't need a passport. He needs his driving license and his certificate. Because he only needs a driving license or any national ID to travel to the UK. All right? But you, Ghanaian doctor, you were taught in primary school, secondary school, university in English. So first you have to apply, then you have to have your certificate recertified, then you have to prove that you can speak English language, even though you speak English better than somebody who lives in London, and all that. So these are some of the things, these are the inequalities in the citizenship and residency criteria, which I've spoken against for so many years and written about, because it is very, very unfair. And the other thing that I do speak about sometimes, and people laugh at me, is that, you see, during the World Wars, our grandfathers and great-grandfathers fought the Germans and so on for British freedoms. Okay, some of them died because they had to fight for liberties in the UK. Okay, but today, those of us whose grandfathers fought against the Germans can't go to UK without applying for visas and proving that they can speak English. They can't work there without going to apply for work permits, and it's very difficult to get those work permits. But somebody from Germany just gets a driving license and goes straight. The same people that we fought their grandfathers for their freedom now have more access to the UK market, jobs, economy, and everything. We don't. How is this fair? How is this a family?
That's some family.
Yeah,
Mr. Heneku, let's talk about, because at times we have a couple of issues to deal with tonight. So I know you have something to say about it, but tell us when we go on the bridge. Just speak to this Duke of Edinburgh International Awards. This is the 10th edition, I think. But you were telling me about the stages it's had to go through over the years. If you could just elaborate on that for us.
Well, I think it's for
briefly. Then we take our first break.
The awards for voluntary service for students, etc., etc. Who engage in community work, etc., etc. But when I was in secondary school in the 70s, I knew that the head of state then, Colonel Ike Achampong, had it changed. From the Duke of Edinburgh. The Duke of Edinburgh is the consort to the Queen of England, to the head of state award. So this morning, yes, I was quite taken aback when our whole vice president was addressing awardees at the Jubilee House for the Duke of Edinburgh award, and as a result, the son to the Duke of Edinburgh is coming down to Ghana. I don't know what to do about it. He came here to present the awards. This shows again of course, for the British, why with their Commonwealth. And this shows again that the Commonwealth is not ours. We're still doing the bidding, they are bidding. And to come to what Mr. Pratt was saying,
let it go.
in Britain, after the Second World War, they had a shortage of labor, people to work in their factories, railways, etc., etc. They brought in people from the West Indies. Now these people are being thrown out. After so many years, after helping to build Britain, they've been thrown out. It shows a certain kind of mentality as far as the body politic of the British are concerned. Of course, they have been forced to accept that they become a multiracial society. But they are still screaming down the corridor, not wanting to accept it. So anytime they can get to kick us,
the scat is probably the word to use.
Yes,
the scat. Briefly, Mr. Pratt, very briefly.
Why is it that nobody in Ghana or Africa can create Duke of Choco Awards or Manager of Choco Awards or something like that? This is another way that they use to get loyalty from you. You get young men and women to go and walk or climb a mountain and do something that somebody from Edinburgh comes to recognize you that you've done.
Duke of Edinburgh. First of all, I want to know what it means. I'm going to get on Google to find out.
It's pronounced Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
Because of the spelling, a lot of us say Edinburgh, but it's pronounced Edinburgh. Duke of Edinburgh. Okay. So it's a way of getting loyalty. We are giving loyalty to somebody that doesn't need it, or we don't need to do it. We need to give loyalty. Let us create our own award scheme where young people will feel connected to it and will feel loyal to it and give more of their attention and so on to this country. So some Duke sitting somewhere in Edinburgh.
Okay, so we are going to take our first break. When we come back, we are going to be looking at this issue of... One second, please. I want to plan it properly.
Leadership
Still in the UK.
Yes.
I want... Sorry.
Leadership of the Commonwealth.
Leadership of the
Commonwealth.
We'll do that very briefly. Then we'll talk about the Glasgow strike when we come back. I want us to skip this issue of the sexuality because it's torn. Even here, me and you don't agree on this one. So let's just skip it. We'll keep it to our WhatsApp fights.
Yeah, we'll keep it to the WhatsApp. Okay.
So viewers, we will take a short break at this point, but I encourage you to drink water. We are drinking ultimate water. You drink water. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
What's wrong?
They took all my precious stuff.
Did they harm you?
Just when they were about to, they hit the siren and bolted.
Scout the area. You don't have security cameras?
They stole everything.
I thought you used ghost cameras from security
warehouse?
Yes, you should. They couldn't have gotten away the way they did without either being electrocuted or being caught on a CCTV camera.
Yes, Dad. Everything has been installed. Yes. Okay. I will be fine, Dad.
Yeah, for this debate tonight.
You gotta keep long, go do the far job.
Charlie, high tech. She the lie bad could happen tonight. This are no fence.
They couldn't get in this time.
How come?
Security warehouse.
Smart choice.
I guess you have some footage for me there. Crystal clear picture. Pause. I think I know this man. He has a long history with robbery and rape. You are fortunate to have equipped your house with gadgets from security warehouse. Call it in. We'll begin the investigation from here.
Control, come over.
Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back from the break. We are still, on the couch, of course, with moi. But we have just spoken about the Commonwealth. Mr. Pratt has a few words to say, and then we'll quickly get to our next topic. That is the strike that happened in Glasgow for equal pay for women. Mr. Pratt, you have something to say?
Yes, it's very brief. I don't want to bore your viewers. I just want to say that the Commonwealth is supposed to be a democratic institution for everybody. Now, why are we reserving the headship of the Commonwealth to only one family? Not even just a country, but only one family. The King or Queen of England and his or her descendants. Why should it be so? At the last Commonwealth Heads of States meeting, there was all this push for the Queen, from the Queen, asking the Commonwealth to accept Prince Charles, her eldest son, as the new head of the Commonwealth in case she moves on. Why should it be so? If it's a democratic institution, why can't anybody from South Africa or somebody from Australia or Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, why can't we put our names in a hat? Let us have a democratic selection of who the leader of the Commonwealth should be. It should not be reserved for one family. Okay? Otherwise, it is no longer a democratic institution. Now, if we pride ourselves as the proponents of democracy and so on, why should the leadership of such an organization be reserved for one family? So I am pushing this idea, and I've written extensively about it, as you know, that we must open the leadership of the Commonwealth to any member, not only heads of states. Either we do the first system, which is a rotational basis. Let's say every 5 years we have somebody from another Commonwealth country take the chair or the leadership of the Commonwealth, or a proper election where anybody who is a Commonwealth citizen can put their names forward and the person gets elected. If Prince Charles gets elected through such a selection, fine. If he doesn't and it's Amma Pratt, why not?
Why not? Why not? Why not? Let's quickly move on to the next topic, and that's the strike in Glasgow for equal pay for women. This excites me, obviously, because I'm a woman. I'm excited because it's an age-old issue that never seems to go away. Women and men would work the same hours, and yet somehow the men would get paid more than the women. I find it hard to grasp, to wrap my head around, and I'm very excited for this development. Of course, this obviously also brings to mind issues like the working class, standing up for itself. Should I start with Mr. Heneku? Yeah. And Mr. Pratt, should give us some backstory coming directly from the UK.
Well, equality for work done is fundamental. It's a fundamental working class right, which has been demanded for a very long time, and which has not been acceded to by the capitalists, because they simply see they're looking for cheap labor so that they can assure themselves of their profits, and they look and exploit vulnerable people, whether women, whether they are children, whether they are minorities or immigrants. Those are the most vulnerable in the society.
And so let's sorry to cut you, Mr. Heneku, but at this point we have a video that has been compiled by the People's Dispatch, our very abled partners from India. So I'd want us to watch the clip and then come back and continue with the conversation. So please, if the clip is ready, let's roll. Let's have a look.
Scotland is witnessing one of the biggest strikes seeking equal pay for women in the recent history of the United Kingdom. Thousands of women working in schools and home care sectors have embarked on a 2-day strike backed by two major unions, GMB and Unison. Campaigners argue that the City Council's workforce pay and benefits review scheme that was introduced in 2006 led to women workers in school, catering and home care services receiving up to £3 an hour less than salaries in male-dominated jobs. The provision for a 3-year payment protection for men who lost out on bonuses as a result of the changes was not extended to women. The scheme qualifies staff contracted for more than 37 hours for extra payments. Women, who comprise 70% of the council workforce, work for less than 35 hours and hence continue to remain ineligible. Women working in school administration, learning support, nurseries, home care, cleaning and catering organize picket lines and marches to protest against the discriminatory attitude of the Glasgow City Council.
My name's Dawn Thompson. I'm out here to stand up for all the women in Glasgow who have been underpaid and robbed for 12 years by the City Council. It says Glasgow City Council rob the poor to feed the rich fat cats.
Despite the highest court in Scotland, the Court of Sessions, ruling in 2017 that the city's pay system was discriminatory towards women, the City Council refused to end the gender pay gap. The local administration has spent more than £2.5 million to contest the equal pay claims by female workers over the past 10 years. The Glasgow strike has evoked memories of the great 1910 strike for minimum wages by women workers of small chain manufacturing units in the Cradley Heath area in the West Midlands. In 1910, women's rights campaigner Mary MacArthur organised the women workers under the banner of the National Federation of Women Workers for a 10-day strike that ended on October 22nd, forcing the employers to pay the women a minimum wage. The 1910 movement gave rise to the famous song Rouse Ye Women, that talked about the conditions of sweated labour, low-paying, heavy work, and celebrated united action through the trade unions. Rouse ye women, long enduring, beat no iron, blow no bellows, till you win the fight, ensuring pay that is your due. Taking inspiration from the 1910 strike, Glasgow's women workers are determined to end the pay injustice.
Welcome back from the break, viewers. Well, let me just remind you that we are taking WhatsApp messages and text messages. The number is right in front of the screen, so please do send them in now early so we can quickly read and react to them before the show ends. Heneku, sorry that I catch you that way. Please go on.
Yeah. So you realize that historically women have been discriminated against, and like I indicated, they are vulnerables. I mean, it's easy. They came into the workforce late. They were used in the sweatshops, without any proper working conditions, etc., etc. So there's a certain carryover. So in spite of the equal pay amendment laws, etc., etc., there's a certain prejudice. And with this strike, you realize that it's even the public service. They are part of the public service. I suppose the public service are supposed to be the pace setters in best practices as far as implementation of laws are concerned. But here where for Britain, which we are supposed to be looking up to, they are supposed to have high labor standards, they are supposed to have very strong unions, you still have an inbuilt discriminatory attitude because people are not like the mainstream. They are women, so they should be discriminated against, or their skin color is different, or they are immigrants. What is it based on? It's based upon the fact that profit comes before people. And because profit comes before people, anytime that the masters can exploit to make more money, why not? They'll do it.
Why not?
They'll even export their jobs. They'll take their jobs away from their own countries and take it to China or another country where labor is cheap. What I would like to emphasize upon is that our attention should be drawn to the fact that it's because of profit. That is why these discriminatory attitudes are concerned. And of course, with women, they have the added social responsibility of ensuring that our race does not become extinct, because they give birth to our race, they nurture them, they educate them, they do double whatever human beings have to do to survive. And so our attitude towards them should be much more different than what is happening.
Thank you. I feel like saying amen. I feel like saying amen. Mr. Pratt, I want you to do the linkage. What's first of all, a little backstory, consider that you are coming directly from the UK. So give us a little backstory. And beyond that, if you could do the linkage for us, what this means for us. Those of us here, you know us, what I mean. Yeah, what this means for us.
Yeah, I can see maybe somebody watching your screen saying, this thing is happening in Glasgow. I haven't even heard Glasgow before. Why is it relevant to Africa or Ghana? I can understand the anxiety, but the thing is that if you look at, because I worked in immigration a lot, and I still do work in immigration, most of the ladies or women who come into the United Kingdom and go to all over the United Kingdom to work are in those kind of industries. They are doing the cleaning, they are doing the catering, they are doing the working in the homes and so on. So you find that most of our people are in these areas, so it has relevance for us. Directly. And then also you see that if, let's say, you work as a female lawyer in the United Kingdom, or you work as a female doctor in the United Kingdom, you are not discriminated against, because people do the same kind of hours, get the same kind of pay. So it is clear that it's a class thing. It's discrimination against people that they feel they can dominate.
The food chain.
Yeah, lower end of the food chain. They think they can dominate. Why? To increase their profit margin, as Mr. Heneku said. So that is the linkage. But sometimes there is a certain absurdity to it. Last month, there was a case in court where workers of ASDA, and most of ASDA workers are from the third world. Most of ASDA workers are from the third world. But then there is an organization trying to represent them to say that the ladies who work there needed equal pay. And they did it in such a way that they would go to court and lose. Instead of them saying that if anybody worked on the cash till, whether the person is a man or a woman, if they did 8 hours and the man was going to be paid £80, the woman who did the same number of hours should be paid £80. What they did was that they went to court and said they wanted equal pay for those who worked in the warehousing. And the warehouses are extremely very cold places, and it involves a lot of labor, lifting and carrying things, which are physical strength, which are mostly done by men. You can count less than 2% of women in that industry. But when they went to court, they didn't argue that women in that industry should be paid equally as the men working there. They said the women who worked on the cash tills should be paid the same as the men who work in the warehouses doing the physical work. And it is obvious that in such a case, it will go to court and fail. But you see, the organization that took up this fight in the court was itself an organization that was interested in supporting ASDA to make more profit. So it took a case to court and skewed the case in such a way that it will lose the case in court. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally understand what you're saying. The premise of the case itself was faulty. The premise itself was faulty.
But any woman and any woman working, doing the same type of work, covering the same kind of hours and the same conditions must be paid the same. In fact, I would have gone further and said, because sometimes women don't have as much strength as the men. If any woman was doing the same kind of work as a man, she should be paid more.
Because it takes more from the woman than it would take from the man. Now let's bring this conversation home and let's look at our situation here in Ghana. Because here we don't agitate enough as workers, as working class people. Mr. Heneku, corrects me if I'm wrong. I don't think that the average Ghanaian worker is that interested in his rights or in in his, again, educate me if I'm wrong. And stories like these give me hope, and I'm praying and hoping that it trickles down here.
Well, I mean, the Ghanaian worker is also interested in his own welfare, has been interested in his welfare for a very long time, and so because of that, there were a significant part of the national liberation struggle. And because they were a significant part of the national liberation struggle, they were able to win certain concessions which took much longer time in Britain for the British workers to be able to win.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
This is a great piece of information. Thank you.
Yes, by the middle of the 1950s, the trade unions had been able to unite in our country. Like I indicated, they were part of the national liberation struggle. By 1958, we had the first Industrial Relations Act. And the first Industrial Relations Act brought about the check-off system, which ensured that you could take money from workers and use it to run their trade unions. Before, there were house unions. So right here in Pan-African television, you would have the cameramen having their unions, you have the producers having their unions, you have the hosts having their unions. So in one industry, you could have as many unions as possible. And that helped the bosses to be able to break their fronts. But after 1958, after independence, it was not possible with the Industrial Relations Act. One monolithic trade union center was created. And, 65 social security was brought in, the pensions, etc., etc. But you must realize also that in the 1980s, with the onset of neoliberalism, especially in our country, when Jerry Rawlings became the head of state, there was a systematic assault on workers' rights. And the systematic assault on workers' rights started with the destruction of our industries.
Perhaps that's where my premise is from. I'm an 80s baby, so this is what I know.
Yes.
This is what I was exposed to.
Yes. So our industries all became moribund. We opened ourselves up. So competition just destroyed us. And the working class came down. And as the number of working people came down, their strength became, diminished. One. Number two, the trade unions were infiltrated. You understand? Already the assault on the trade unions had started in 1966. And you realize that even in 1971, the trade union hall was seized by the regime. The government at that time, he said that it was for the government which built it. You understand? And tried to abolish a central federation. That's the Ghana Trade Union Congress, and said you could have individual unions. But like I said, in the 1980s, there was a systematic assault on trade unions and trade union rights, to the extent that we now went back to create rules or laws which allowed for more than one trade union center. And because we have more than one trade union center, it's not only the Ghana TUC, although it has got 20 unions, I'm told. It's not only them who represent the unions. There's also Federation of Labor and others, which brings about divisions, because they claim there ought to be freedom of association. So under the guise of freedom of association, they use it to divide the workers. Again, we had very advanced labor laws in our country. I mean, when in Ghana here, we were giving maternity leave to women. After they've given birth, they have to spend 3 months on maternity leave to look after their kids, etc., etc. It was not so in Britain. The British had to fight for it. But all these advances which were made, like I indicated, had been whittled away. And because our trade unions have become less radicalized, their numbers have gone down. They've not been fighting as much as they should.
Hopefully stories like this would motivate the unions to fight more. I want us to move on quickly. Let's talk about Palestine, and the airstrikes in Palestine. Well, let me just say the Palestinian situation. Well, before we get into it, let's watch a video again from the People's Dispatch in India, our partners in India. Let's watch this clip, and then we come back and have the conversation. Stay with us. Okay, so what we have would be images, viewers, images on the screen of the consequences of the airstrike. So what it is really is a series of Israeli airstrikes inside Palestine in the last few days, leading to multiple deaths and injuries, including the deaths of women and children. So on Sunday, 3 Palestinian boys between the ages of 12 and 14 were killed in airstrikes in the southeastern part of the Gaza Strip. Mr. Heneku, I mean, these stories are just, what's the word, right?
Yes.
You think you've heard the worst, and then you hear something crazier than the one you heard before. And this situation sort of just dampens my spirits every now and then.
Well, this is the face of Zionism, because Zionism is simply the ideology, national ideology, that people's lands can be taken away from them, and people push on the basis that some people, according to their religious tracts, have been promised some place by their God. And so, although God is supposed to have created all humanity, those other people should live where they are, so that that place can be given or taken over by this so-called special people. Now, mind you, Zionism is not the same as Jews. It's not all Jews who are Zionists. But Zionism is an ideology which came about 100 years ago, at the beginning of the last century, which tried to create a national home for dispossessed people in Europe who were known as Jews. And the fight against the Palestinians, indeed women and children, it's not the best. I mean, there's absolutely no difference between what the Nazis are supposed to have done to the Jews and what the Zionists are doing to the Palestinians. I don't know, there must be people of conscience who should fight for the rights of the Palestinians. Of course, everything is reduced in a reductionist manner, that, oh, they are throwing bombs. But the truth of the matter is that, why are they throwing bombs? Before 1948, were they throwing bombs? I mean, no. They were living peacefully, growing their oranges, etc., in their desert, minding their own business. So a huge group of immigrants came from Europe because they are being chased away by the Europeans to come and forcibly take away the lands from them. And that's not fair. Any Jew living anywhere in the world has a right to return to Palestine. But the Palestinians who were born in that land are to be expelled. There to be refugees in Lebanon, there are to be refugees in Syria, refugees in Jordan, and scattered all over. And that's not fair. And because of this ideology of Zionism was akin to that of apartheid, because it has racist undertones, they were very good friends of apartheid South Africa. They helped apartheid South Africa. They gave them arms to oppress the black people of South Africa. And of course, it's the same thing which was happening in South Africa. A group of people come, immigrants come, and they try to push the indigenous people away. It's the same thing even we have in our various countries. Just bring your mind to what is happening to the indigenous people along the coast. Urbanization, etc., is pushing and marginalizing them, as if they are not part of the society. So you see various degrees of discrimination, etc., even among like people, I mean people who are the same, but because they are indigenous minorities, so they suffer from the majority groups. And so what is happening in Palestine should be condemned, and condemning it does not make one anti-Semitic, because it's not only Jews who are Semites. The Palestinians and Arabs too are Semites. So, fighting for justice, fighting for equal rights, fighting for access fighting to live in peace. These are universal values which we should all fight for.
I'll tell you something. The last time I had a conversation with a Palestinian ambassador to Ghana, he said something that really got me a little teary. He said that Sunday, he and his family had gone to the beach. You know, he put his whole family in the car and they went to the beach. And at the beach, they themselves, you know, chose fish directly and brought that fish home and cooked the fish and ate. And that little experience for him was like heaven. Those were his exact words. He said it was like heaven. Because here in Ghana, because he couldn't imagine doing the same thing in his own country. In his own country. I mean, what kind of life do we, you know, reduce our fellow human beings to such a simple, seemingly uneventful, mundane activity can be heaven for somebody?
Well, you see, a lot of people get confused about Zionism and Judaism. Now, let us make it very clear. Zionism is a political ideology or a political idea. It is a system of government created by a group of people currently in Israel and in some parts of the world, especially America, to rule the area now called Palestine and Israel for the benefit of Israelis. Judaism is a religion, and most Zionists are not even believers of that religion. For instance, no Zionist believes that Jesus is the Messiah and that they are still expecting the Messiah to come at another time. So we have a lot of Christians in Ghana and in some countries that support Zionism simply on the basis that this is Israel. They are the chosen people of God. But what they are doing there even contradicts what is in the Bible. In 1948, a small parcel of land was bought near where Palestine is to bring the Israelis from all over the world who were being chased away, and some had been killed by Hitler and so on. Now, once they got there, they decided to expand by taking lands belonging to the Palestinians who had been there all along. And that is how they created their system of government to do. Now, you will recall that in 1967, the Six-Day War, when they took lands from Syria, the Golan Heights from Syria, they took lands from Egypt, they took lands from Jordan, and so on. Those were not their lands. The lands that were bought for them were there. But they went on expansionism to take those lands belonging to other people. Now, if you look at the previous map of Palestine, it was one country. Now, Palestine has been divided into two, where the West Bank is not even connected to Gaza. Now we have the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and Israel in the middle. So how does somebody in the West Bank relate to somebody in the Gaza? That's why I keep saying that people should stop referring to Gaza Strip and West Bank and start just calling it Palestine. Okay, and call it Palestine. Now, the young boys who are throwing stones at Israeli soldiers, they are doing it out of frustration, because you have a 12-year-old boy who will never see the inside of a classroom, who will never see anything that amounts to much for him to look up to see that, oh, if I work very hard, within the next 20 years, I could become a doctor or something like that, because the Israelis are making it absolutely impossible for that to happen. In fact, they have 4 ambulance crossings per day for the whole of Palestine. So if you get hit by a vehicle or you get shot by a soldier or anything, once those 4 ambulances have crossed for the day, that is it. You can only receive treatment in Israel, not in Palestine, because their hospitals and their medicine facilities and all have been disseminated. What is the word?
Disseminated.
Yes, destroyed. Let me use the word destroyed by the Israelis. Okay. So that is the thing, and the world is looking on unconcerned. The other thing that I find, America recently reduced 66 million from the United Nations agency that provides help and assistance to the people of Palestine, and everybody in the world is complaining and shouting. But why is it that we are not doing anything to provide those alternative funds to the United Nations? We have so many other countries that are shouting and screaming that can easily mobilize those kinds of funds for the United Nations agency so that it can continue with its humanitarian work in Palestine. But they are not doing so. Now, even when we go to the United Nations and we try and have resolutions that condemns the activities of Israel, America would simply veto it. Why? Because the Zionist movement have formed a very powerful lobby that even controls who becomes the president of America and so on. In the last elections, everybody who was somebody who was trying to become American president, from Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, what are the other names? Those senators attended. Mitt Romney. Everybody attended the Israeli lobby Congress in America, and everybody promised that if I became president, I'll move the embassy to East Jerusalem. The only person who didn't do that, credit to him, was himself a Jew. That was Bernie Sanders. He didn't do that. But everybody went to promise the Jews something, because if you don't promise them that, and they think that you could be antagonistic to the things that they do, killing Palestinian women and children.
Or just destabilize the system that's been working or waiting for them.
And then you will become president of America. They will make sure that you don't. You see. So this is what is happening in the system, and we should be doing it because it has effect on us in Africa. We think it's happening in Palestine. How about the refugees who are coming across into Egypt, into Ethiopia, and so on? And we have an African Union that is doing nothing about it because it is scared that if it said anything against Israel, somebody in the White House would refuse them aid or something like that. But we should be saying something. We were up in arms against apartheid South Africa. Why are we silent on Israel? You remember recently when Trump moved the embassy to East Jerusalem. There was a vote in the United Nations where some African countries, including Ghana, voted against the Trump decision. And you had the Israeli ambassador in Ghana who had the impudence to warn Ghana that if we ever voted against Israel in a resolution again, Ghana will smell pepper.
That?
Yes, he did that. It was in the news. It was everywhere. Yeah. We didn't even invite the Israeli ambassador for a dressing down and for him to apologize to us. We didn't. So the issue of Palestine is very, very, very serious. We cannot have any part of the world where women and children have no hope of life. So you have women encouraging their children to go and throw stones at the soldiers, because the child is going to die anyway. By the time the child is 18 years, it's either from disease or from malnutrition or from anything. So why don't I use my child to further our fight for a national life? So it's happening. But it's very, very sad indeed that the world is sitting there unconcerned for Israel to behave this way towards human beings with such impudence without anybody saying anything
about it. Well, we are moving on from one sad story to another sad story. I want us to look now at the story of Jamal Kharshoggi. The murder. Because our time is up, I'm not even going to talk too much about it. Let's just dig right in. Mr. Pat, you want to continue something? Heneku comes on. You want to
listen. This person is a human being. A lot of people are just looking at him as a journalist. He's a human being. He's been murdered in a most gruesome manner by a state in another country, even though it happened in its embassy. And the world is sitting down and behaving as if it's some concert and that we are begging the Saudi Arabians to tell us what happened. The Turkish authorities have provided a lot of information stating how the guy was lured into the embassy in Istanbul, stating how the guy was jumped upon by 15 men. Listen, there is information that there were 15 people who traveled in 2 private planes owned by the Saudi crown prince. They call him BMS, MBS, owned by him. And one of the people who traveled was the head of his security. One of the people who traveled was his personal doctor. Now, do you think that these two people will travel to Istanbul without the knowledge of the Crown Prince? A whole day trip to, you know. Now, what the world should be doing at this moment is to look at the life of a human being that had been taken away in such a brutal and inhumane way. Imagine this thing happened in Burundi, or happened in Zimbabwe when Mugabe was president, or happened in Kampala when Idi Amin was president. What the world would be saying by now. We need an internationally qualified team of not only criminal investigators, but forensic investigators with a lot of information to investigate and bring the report so the world can act. This is no longer a crime in Istanbul conducted, but this is an international crime. International crime. And we have a lot of journalists languishing in prisons. We have Al Jazeera journalists in prison in Egypt. We have people languishing in prison in Myanmar, and Burma, and so on. This is the time for journalists like you, like people watching us, like the Ghana Journalists Association, West Africa Media Organization, National Media Commission, journalists all over to come together and say we've had enough. You see, even in this country, we had a deputy minister who slapped a journalist, and one confronted, he said, "Oh, I thought he was an onion seller." Doesn't mean that onion sellers are allowed to be slapped willy-nilly because you are a politician. And this person was allowed to go to court and use alternative dispute resolution system. When somebody had gone to the market and stole 2 fingers of banana to feed their children, they put them in prison for 6 months. And we sit down and we laugh about these things. Now, if we are not able to show leadership in whatever country it is, or our politicians, that a journalist is not meant to be slapped for free. I think that's this week or last week, another journalist was slapped by one of the political organizations during a poll. And people make a little noise about it, and that is the end. Even when the cases have gone to court, we have powerful people who go and withdraw the cases and decide to settle it out of court. We should not allow these things to be happening. We cannot have democracy without journalists who can say anything which is the truth. Because the work of a journalist is to be able to educate, inform, entertain, and so on. And they are getting slapped and we are not doing anything about it. They are getting killed in other countries and nobody is saying anything about it. It's a very serious issue. If anybody is watching me who is a journalist, it could be you next. So this is the time to stop yourself from being slapped the next time. This is the time to come together not only as journalists, but as people from all over the youth organizations, student movements. So far, I haven't seen the Ghana Journalists Association or any journalist go and stand in front of the Saudi Arabian embassy with a placard to say, "Tell us the truth. Who killed Kharshoggi? Where is the body of Kharshoggi?" Did you see the gruesome photographs of how his face was removed?
I couldn't look.
And how the body is displayed up till today.
I couldn't.
We don't have media organizations in Ghana, Africa, and so on showing these things because we are afraid that Saudi Arabia won't give us the little envelopes that they give us. What are we doing?
That's a good question to ask. What are we doing? What are we doing, Mr. Heneku? What are we doing?
Well, the truth of the matter is that I want to elevate the whole thing from the individual to the level of the state. It simply shows a primitive state which still wallows in savagery and barbarism. And that is what the Saudi Arabian state, the monarchy, those ruling them, that's their mindset. The mindset of not even murdering in a civilized manner.
Murdering in a civilized manner, that's a concept.
I'm telling you, murdering in a civilized manner was that they could have bombed him off in a car accident.
Make it quick.
Or something. How do you strangle him and cut him up?
When he's still alive. When he's still alive.
It shows a certain feudal mentality, which is very dangerous, especially for a rich country like Saudi Arabia, with all these armaments which is being given to them by the United States, Germany, and other countries. And that is why we are having the war in Yemen. That's why they are causing famine to about 40 million people in Yemen. The callousness with which they approach state policy is such that it's just below that of the human, what the human can comprehend. And we need to come together. They are not the first people to be murdering a journalist. A Bulgarian journalist was raped and murdered some few weeks ago. In Ghana here, policemen are beating up journalists, and they're almost going scot-free. You know, security persons of presidential hopefuls are beating journalists. There's a certain violence, a violence against freedom of expression, which is anti-democratic as well, which is ever present in our societies. And the sad thing about this whole thing is the fact that because of money, because of profit, those who profess to be the apostles of morality, the United States of America, the leading crusader for human rights, they are unable to come out clearly to condemn this kind of barbarity. Why? Because they don't want to lose profit from selling arms to these savage people in Saudi Arabia. Germany and Britain, they just make some noise and go behind and still deal with these people. And this is not happening only in Saudi Arabia, it's happening in many places in this world. And it's high time that the democratic forces of this world got up and fought against this kind of savagery.
Thank you so much. Our time is up. You know, our time is up. But before we leave, we've spoken on 4 very important, you know, international and political stories. But perhaps there may have been something that you wish you had a bite on that you didn't. So just a few seconds. You know, if there's anything out of our 4 topics that you want to touch on briefly before we leave the studio. Just Zapier is somewhere staring at us, you know, waiting to come in.
Well, okay, let me say something very, very quickly. Last year, Ghana spent nearly $110 million importing tomato products like tin tomato, tomato ketchup, tomato puree, and so on from Holland and other European countries. Okay, imagine if we had spent $100 million in Bumpurugu or Palugu tomato industry, just revamping the factories. How many people would we give employment to in Palugu and Bumpurugu and that area with $100 million? Okay, so as part of our earlier discussion, we have technocrats advising the government that it is a good enough investment to spend $100 million buying tomato products from Europe when our factories in the north are collapsing. Now, we said we're going to give $1 million to each constituency. Now, imagine $100 million in Bolgatanga alone. How it would transform Bolgatanga. Okay. Now, how much money do we use in importing jute sacks for cocoa marketing board to export our cocoa? That is about $200 million every year. We have a jute factory in Kumasi and Insan Estates. Now, if you spend $200 million every year in Kumasi and Insan Estates, you employ more than 1 million young people every year. Okay, look at Japan textiles. Where is the textile? And even in Japan, you know, under a champion, some machines were brought, milk making machines, because the Japan people have a lot of cattle farms and cattle farms and so on. There, all those machines have been left to go waste. Look at the number of the amount of money we spend in importing milk into this country. All these things is because we don't have people who are loyal to our countries. Because if we are spending this amount of money improving our own industries, Commander Sugar Factory, how much rice do we import? Check. Do your research. Let your people go and check how much money we use in importing rice when the local rice industry is collapsing. And local rice is very expensive because we are importing cheap, useless rice from China. And all these things can be done and give good impetus to the improvement of our economy. That is what I want to.
That's what you want to say, Mr. Heneku. You have nothing to say.
It's quite interesting. I wish the one district, one factory were being implemented with what Mr. Pratt is suggesting. But the truth, the stark truth, is that there are some people who are benefiting from ensuring that bad rice is imported. There are people who are benefiting from ensuring that second-hand goods are imported for the middle class in our country because they're making profits. So it is the profit that people are making which makes their loyalty be more to their pockets than to the national cause.
Than to the national cause. Let me read just 2 or 3 of the messages we got and then we can run out of here. This one says, good evening to your panelists and viewers. The oppressed would surely be liberated and truth would surely triumph over all other rivals. And then he says, what? Zionism. You did not add your name and your location. You should have done that. This one says, the UK has a racial animosity against the black Commonwealth countries, and that is a big shame. Again, you also did not add your name. Monica Cons, I see you. Monica Cons is a very regular texter to Pan-African TV. I won't say the couch. Okay. All the other messages, I see you. I see the hi. I see the compliments. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. You know, we are grateful. There would be no show without all of you. Again, I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Justice Heneku, who is a social scientist, and also to you, Mr. KOFI KAKRABA PRATT, you know, international immigration law advocate in the UK, and also a forensic psychologist from the UK. Thank you so much. Today, I've learned. You took me to school. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll have another show. Also, I'd like to say a special thank you to the People's Dispatch in India. Thank you so much for this news collaboration. It's awesome. Let me just say that. And I hope this continues. We keep it this way. Well, lovely evening. You know, enjoy the rest of your evening. Don't go nowhere. Hot news is next. Stay with Pan-African TV. We are truly, truly African. Have a good evening. Bye.
Akbanono de kakwe Nato nyokoroto na kwe Akbanono de kakwe Namojimo namore na kwe Okoga Nukara la shivo vamo como tudo Nukara la shivo vamo jimo tudo Amo oto jimo mo como tudo Amo oto jimo mo como Namo jimo akanya kuno